D. Docs present Wonder Number 11, the complete story of Cartoon Network. How a television channel taught a generation to imagine differently. Black, silence, then the click of a CRT television. The soft electrical hum fills the room. A remote control button clicks. Channels flicker past. Static. Then a checkerboard logo appears, two simple letters CN. Somewhere, a bowl of cereal lands on a coffee table. A backpack hits the floor. Someone yells, "Cartoons are on!" And without realizing it, an entire generation was about to discover an animation. That animation could be anything. Look, let us keep it real right out the gate. Much of children's television still assume kids wanted bright colors, safe storytellings, and characters that talk down to them like they failed preschool. They thought animation was just babysitting material to keep you quiet on a Saturday morning while your parents drank coffee in peace. Then, Cartoon Network stepped onto the block, locked the doors, and let the weird kids take over the master control room. You had creators drawing monsters, mad scientists and space bunny hunters, loose leaf paper, and suddenly a whole world tuned in to watch, I should say. And there is always more to the story. Before Cartoon Network existed, your viewing habits were tied to the strict schedule of the old guard. Saturday morning cartoons were a sacred ritual. You woke up at dawn, rushed to the living room, and crammed down sugary cereal while three major networks dueled out half-hour blocks of programming. The rest of the week meant living off dusty syndication scraps and Hanna-Barbera reruns aired at ungodly hours. You watched whatever reruns of Tom and Jerry and the Flintstones they threw at you because those were the shows that kept coming back around. And we love them, but that's what it was at the time. The library of classic animation was massive, sitting in studio vaults, gathering dust, waiting for somebody crazy enough to build an entire television station out of hand-drawn ink and paint. Many people question whether an all-cartoon cable channel could sustain 24 hours of programming. Skeptics wondered if the audience would burn out on endless animation loops. They did not realize what happens when you give an endless canvas to people whose imaginations never grew up. The launch happened in 1992 under Turner Broadcasting, and it started as a massive gamble. By the time Cartoon Network launched, Turner Broadcasting had assembled the Hanna-Barbera library alongside the MGM cartoon archive, giving the new venture an unprecedented vault of vintage shorts. Filling a 24-hour daily schedule with those assets, however, was entirely uncharted territory. For the first few years, Cartoon Network functioned as a living museum of classic animation. Looney Tunes, Scooby-Doo, Tom and Jerry, and Yogi Bear ran back to back until your eyes turned square. Most networks would have stopped right there, collected cable subscription checks, and called it a day. Instead, Cartoon Network did something radical. They invested in a generation of creators and original productions, laying the foundation for what would become Cartoon Network Studios and handling creative freedom to a bunch of wide-eyed young visionaries. That single creative bet birthed the legendary Cartoons block. Dexter's Laboratory opened the secret door to the basement, filled with radioactive lasers and giant robots masterminded by Genndy Tartakovsky. Soon after, Craig McCracken introduced the world to the Powerpuff Girls and their brand of sugar, spice, and chemical X destruction. Johnny Bravo swaggered across the screen with the Pompadour and Zero game, brought to life by Ben Partible, Cow and chicken brought pure, unadulterated surrealism to suburban life, contrary by David F. I Am Weasel, Ed, and Eddie, and created by Danny Antonucci, and Courage the Cowardly Dog, built by John R. Dilworth, followed right behind them. Come over here. You really gotta hear this. Because those shows weren't just funny, they were master classes in visual anarchy. They proved that cartoons could be terrifying, hilarious, brilliantly bizarre, and deeply emotional all at the same time. When Friday nights rolled around, the network turned the entire television landscape into a community event. Cartoon Fridays. It wasn't just a programming block, it was appointment television before streaming transformed the shared experience. You had custom character hosts running interstitial segments, voting polls, viewer mail, and sneak peeks that made you feel like you were hanging out in secret clubhouses with everybody else in America who loved animation. You rushed home from middle school, grabbed your snacks, and planted yourself in front of the tube because missing a Friday night premiere meant you were completely out of the Monday playground lunchroom conversations. Now, the network made you feel like you belonged to something exclusive, creating a shared national experience that modern on-demand viewing rarely replicates. And then came Toonami. That block deserves its own wing in the museum. Moltar and Tom running the spaceship mainframe from the ghost planet, the iconic sci-fi synth beat, that unforgettable sci-fi narration telling you to stand by for action. Cartoon Network didn't just import Japanese anime, they introduced millions of Western kids to an entirely different style of storytelling. Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, Gundam Wing, Yu Yu Hakusho, Rurouni Kenshin, Naruto, One Piece. Kids grew up watching standard American slapstick, suddenly discovered sprawling, serialized emotional odysseys where characters trained for 10 episodes just to power up a single punch. And villains had complex backstories that made you question who was actually right here. Toonami grew and blew the roof off the building and changed what animation could mean to a growing mind. Meanwhile, the network was defending itself against fierce competition in the cable landscape. While Nickelodeon balanced hit live-action programming with influential Nicktoons, and Disney Channel blended family sitcoms with Disney animated legacy, Cartoon Network made animation itself the centerpiece of its identity. Kids didn't just watch one network, they flipped back and forth, but Cartoon Network was where you went when you wanted animation that felt like a wild indie comic book come to life. By the mid-2000s, the network pulled off one of the smartest branding maneuvers in television history. CN City. Instead of standard commercial bumpers or breaks, every single character from every show was dropped into one massive, living, breathing metropolis. Dexter walking past Johnny Bravo, Courage hiding behind a street lamp while the kids next door fly past overhead Samurai Jack meditating in a park while Ed, and Eddie caused chaos down the block. It wasn't just a collection of separate IP holdings, it was a sprawling ecosystem of creativity. It proved that all these distinct artistic visions shared a single universe where anything was possible. Now, as the sun went down, the network executed another stroke of genius. The creative spirit of shows like Space Ghost Coast to Coast helped pave the way for Adult Swim, which later embraced series like Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Family Guy, and original adult animation. Adult Swim proved that Cartoon Network's audience had grown up right alongside the channel. redefining late night television and proving that the network's belief in fearless creativity didn't have an age limit. As the years rolled on, the network did not rest on its laurels. They reinvented the wheel all over again. Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends brought warmth and whimsical chaos. Camp Lazlo brought scout camp humor back to the swamp. Ben 10 turned sci-fi wristwatch into every kid's ultimate superhero daydream. Chowder and the Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack flooded the screen with hyper-textured, watercolor-soaked absurdity. And then Adventure Time and Regular Show arrived, capturing the hearts of both nostalgic teenagers and wide-eyed kids, followed by the dazzling digital collage of the amazing world of Gumball. Cartoon Network kept finding new ways to evolve without losing its soul. The art style changed, the technology changed, entire generations of viewers changed. Yet somehow the network kept rewarding curiosity over conformity. Every empire faces the digital shift. Streaming arrived, YouTube clips, endless memes, mobile screens, and binge watching culture changed how audiences consumed media. Cable subscriptions dropped, kids stopped waiting on Friday nights, the physical television set in the living room lost its monopoly on attention. Or so the tech executives thought. Because Cartoon Network's influence didn't vanish just because the distribution model changed. Fans took those characters and carried them straight into the internet age through viral clips, looping memes, dedicated fan art, and elaborate convention cosplay. The network's spirit survived because the audience refused to let the imagination die. Now, long before kids dreamed of becoming YouTubers, streamers, or game developers, many dreamed of drawing cartoons for Cartoon Network. Bedrooms became sketchbooks, homework margins became storyboards, composition notebooks filled with strange heroes, impossible monsters, and imaginary worlds. For countless young artists, Cartoon Network wasn't just saying something they were watching after school. It was the first place that made creativity feel like a real career. Countless modern animators, storyboard artists, and showrunners grew up staring at those exact frames, learning how to pitch weird ideas and trust their own artistic instincts. It proved to millions of viewers, a whole generation of future creators, that creating cartoons did not have to be sanitized, boring, or safe. They could be weird, they could be artistic, they could be funny, scary, heartfelt, and experimental without ever talking down to kids. That is what imagination looks like when you take off the guardrails and let artists draw whatever is in their heads. The CRT clicks off, the glowing checkerboard fades into the dark. I am D Moore, and remember, headlines fade, culture lasts, because there is always more to the story.